Okay, I'm back. So most of the lighthouses have a round ball on top, slightly domed dome to it, and then come down for the windows, and then usually a chair rail across here. And then we're going to come down. Need to move the whole thing to the left some, because the center of the bark is about here, because the bark is moving. So we may not get the entire lighthouse in the round in here, and that's okay. You have to do what the wood allows you to do. So I'm going to move this down in my fixture. To make it easier on me to reach this point here to carve. What I'm going to do, or try to do, is block out the area for the ball here, which eventually is going to get moved back, but that way I can set it in place on the carving so I know where it's going to be at. Away a little bit. Oh, that's chipping away pretty good. So let's see what we got left here of the wood. It's pretty chippy up in that area. Excuse me if I'm in the way. I've got to see what's going on over here. Yeah, that wood's pretty chippy on the back side. Just kind of flaking apart back there. So we will have to end up putting some super glue on it. To get that in there. Probably won't talk a whole lot during these videos. I'm not even going to edit them because I've watched a lot of videos that have been edited, and what I find out with me watching and the way my mind works for me to learn is they get to this process and then the next thing you know will be the whole outline of the lighthouse done, and my mind can't process how to go from here to the rough end staged part of the lighthouse. So I'm just going to let the video roll as I go, and it may end up being 3, 4, 5 videos to get stuff done and finished project on the books. And if somebody wants to watch them all, that's great. And then if you don't, that's okay too. But at least that way you can see where I'm at in my mind on how I move from one point to the other, because I've seen a lot of videos where they like, okay, we're gonna set the beard in, say, like a green man carving or a wood spirit carving. It's like, okay, we're setting the beard, and they make 2 or 3 chisel groove marks down the beard, and then it's edited, and then the next scene is a full beard completely done. And I just have a hard time processing how they got from a few chisel marks down to a beautiful carved beard, because I'm not at that point in my journey yet where I can do that. And so if this helps anybody, it will be great, and if not, it's okay too. Take my knife, cut some wood off this side. And now I see why people use the huge chisels, because you can get a lot of material off really quick. It's starting to get loose already on the mount. And whenever you're carving with wood or bark or whatever you tend to use, you can see spots like this that's flaky and gross and will probably chip off, and you're like, oh, how do you fix it? Sometimes you glue it back on, sometimes you incorporate it into your design, or that just part of the design just kind of goes away. So what I'm trying to do now, if the base of the lighthouse is going to be about here, I'm trying to get this one side at an angle that's going to be in proportionate to the top that I have going up here. So if I'm going to make the base this wide, probably put a little house over here, so all this material right in here will need to come out. That's what I'm thinking right now. We'll see, that may change. May not put a house on the side if the bark chips out and that wood where I was going to do the house kind of goes away. That will be fine also. Because you never know what this stuff's going to do. But if the base is about that thick, then the top needs to be probably half that thickness. So I'm trying to get it conical shape up through there. This side has got bark on it, so I'll probably leave the side of this over here bark, so they can tell, whoever is looking at it, can tell what kind of material it's made from. Excuse me if my head's in the way. I'm right-handed, not left-handed. That's why I've got the camera on that side. I figure I'll be less in the way. Since I do all my most of my carving with my right hand. One thing I've noticed in the Chafe tools is the angle here on the heel of the chisel is more steeper than some of the other chisels which have more of an angle. What those angles do, the steeper the angle, like this, the longer it will hold an edge, or the less fragile the edge is. And if you're doing hardwoods, you can use mallet work, and the edges aren't as fragile because they're thicker, and they won't tend to chip and break the chisel to make you have to refinish the edge. Now for that, it's better for just rough out work to me than the fine work. Because with the fine work, you can get your chisel in like that and take off light pieces. With me, with the aggressive angle, it's harder to get smaller pieces off because you have to go more towards an aggressive edge. But if you get down to some nice soft cottonwood bark like I'm doing now, you can do that. And here's an example. This is a different manufacturer of chisel, and the heel edge is a lot less aggressive. And you can do finer work with it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to try to clean this area up here. Oh, that's really chippy on that side. And take the little round piece, or the ball that's usually on top of the roof in the center of the lighthouse, which is going to be this piece right here, and move it back into the carving to give it some dimension so we've got room to come out with the roof and everything else. And so that ball's going to be around that big, maybe a little smaller, and the roof's going to come off to there. basically what I'm doing is just roughing in the ball. That would be on top, because we'll come back later and detail it out, because you don't want to get too many details in the beginning in case you have to go back and change something or fix it. Then you can't add wood back to it. It's pretty much gone at that point. The top of the lighthouse is usually straight down. So if we bring the roof around here, on the right side I've got, this is the bottom of the roof here. I'm definitely not symmetrical over here with that side. So what we'll do is take a gouge tool or a V tool, and I'm going to turn it here, and I'm going to set the roof line in with it, just so I know where it's at. Because right now, the way I'm looking at it, this is still too far out, so it's going to have to go back, but I still have to cut away a lot in here to get the lighthouse light room itself. So we're going to set that in about there. And then I'll come down to about here, right in through there, and that's going to be the light room itself on the lighthouse. Which is going to be basically vertical, because the walls are vertical. They're not. In the light room, they are not slanted in any way. Center line there. And let's see. Go back to here. Excuse my hands. And change chisels to just a little bit wider one. It's got a little bit more of a rounded edge on it. Just so I can feel better about taking out a little bit more material. And since this is a roof, here in this part, I'm going to come undercut it a little bit while I block it in. Sometimes you hit stuff like that and it chips. Especially if you push with one hand. If you use one hand as a push and one hand as a pull, sometimes when it breaks through the wood, you can stop it from hitting the next piece and busting it off. And so if I had all this detailed and I hit it and nicked it out like that, that piece would just be gone. And there would not be anything you can do unless you recarve the whole top with all the detail back in it. So that's why you wait till you get all your stuff roughed in and set in place and your dimensions right in case you have to change anything. Taking the V-tool. Dig it in a little bit so I can get this vertical. You just heard that chip, and you can see how rough that chip is. You can take bigger, rougher chips out when you're in the blocking process. But if that happens when you're in the detailing process, then you just have to do the best you can to work with what you got. If it is wood, stuff's gonna chip off, flake off, especially in cottonwood bark. Okay, that's roughed in. I like the way that looks there. Like I said, later on we'll go back and put detail around it, like a little handrail. This will have to be narrowed up some more, but it gives you the idea of the shape up there. And it may end up being a lot smaller as I carve away. Just to get to the point I want, it seems like I end up recarving the design 3 or 4 times to get it to the final dimension that I want it to be, to where I think it looks good. I honestly think for this height here, it's going to be a long, tall lighthouse. It's going to be rather small coming up here. And all of this is probably going to end up being this wide. Because right now it's just big and bulky and looks out of proportion. But you have to start somewhere. So I'm going to hog more material out as I go. noticed this side of the bark had more material on it than the other side. I'm going to be hogging more out of this side. There are a lot of wood carving artists on YouTube that you can watch that by the time I end up with this, I'm going to end up wasting a lot of time recarving it because I'm very timid about taking off too much material to begin with. I'd rather carve it 2 or 3 times to get it down to where I want it than take a bunch off and go, oh, I took too much off because of my inexperience. You've got wood carvers like Alec Lacasse, who I got him mixed up with somebody else, but Alec Lacasse, who will hog material off because he's been doing it for 17 years. And Doug Linker, who will hog material off because he's been doing it for a long time. And some other ones out there. I'm not that confident in my carving skills yet to be able to do that. Although I am a lot more confident now than when I started, because when I started I would not be taking as much off and being aggressive as I am right now. But you got to start somewhere. And once I got shape up here of the general area, I knew this had to be much smaller. So now I can start taking material away here to go up to here. I think the base of the lighthouse is going to come here. Draw a line there, and this is where I'm imagining the lighthouse is going to be, and only this wide when I get done with all of this up here. So what I'll do, take this in, aggressively set in the base, or aggressive for me. It's a lot of beautiful wood or bark. This bark is Alaskan cottonwood bark. You can get it from Montana and seems to be from northwest, northeast states, but mainly in the north. I live here in Georgia, where it is not close to me, and therefore I have to pay purchase it and have it shipped to me. You can get it on eBay. There are some sellers on eBay that grades it for different grades, whether it's carvable or it's hard to where they recommend you using power tools. But I bought bark off of eBay, and I bought it through some of the Facebook groups I'm on, and it usually ends up being about, for a piece like this, after shipping and everything, you're going to have $20 in a piece of bark like this by the time it's all said and done with shipping and taxing and bark. But that's if you buy it in a quantity, 5 or 6 pieces. If you try to just buy one, it's going to be more expensive because shipping's going to be more expensive. I've carved off my set lines here on the side as I narrowed that up, so I just marked them so I don't lose them. Lost them again. At least I've still got that here, this here. You can turn the chisels around if they have a curvature on them and use that to carve away your wood to get a rounded edge. See a lot of people doing that. I'm gonna have to pull this bark off here, remount it, put some super glue in the bark back here to stabilize the back of it, because it's got about a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch of flakiness coming through the back side. Trying to stay out of the way of the camera on this side. Grab the knife up. I don't like the way the knife's cutting into it. Still need to get this face narrowed up a little bit. because this is going to be basically half round, a third round of a lighthouse. You have to remember you're just going to have to proportion this to where it will go all the way around in relation. You can't have a big flat thing here and it be in the round, so to speak. What I'm doing now, I'm looking at the front going, okay, I want to remove this material right here because that's what I need to do from the front. This is a little flatter U-shaped gouge. It's a number 212. So it's almost flat, straight like a regular woodworking chisel. Don't use it that often. I like for it to be a little bit rounder because I don't feel like the edges will dig in as much as I'm going through stuff. Basically, I'm just working on this one side to get it where I want it. Got a lot more to take off over here. That's better. The carving was starting to get crooked in the thing. Yeah, and the even the cottonwood bark has got a grain to it. You come across to it, you can see where it just kind of chips out. So you have to figure out the grain and kind of go with it so you don't get rips or tear outs. And you can tell because it will cut and slice a lot nicer. What I have found on any wood, the wood grain is subject to change in the middle of the grain. So now you can see our basic shape of the lighthouse coming out here, the roof here. This has got to come in, be a lot more narrow. Go ahead and set the top of the roof back in here. And these are not intended to be instructional videos. If you can learn something by watching me or listening to me run my mouth and get some tips or tricks off of it, that's awesome. You're just there at, because I wasn't using two hands, I overshot what I was wanting to take out and it chipped the corner away, but that's why I don't have it down to detailing size yet, because it will get smaller and that chip will be insignificant. And if you don't make mistakes while you're carving and the wood doesn't chip out, you know, then it's just a awesome carve. See if I can set this dome in a little bit more. Take the chisel, making some stop cuts around. here. We'll do a little knife work to pair that up. And I don't know if you can see it, but when I cut down, it's flaking much worse than when I'm cutting up. You can see it's getting much narrower as I'm getting my shape cut in that I want. This dome will get a lot smaller as I get into it, because around here you will have the handrail around through here, cut into it, and separation for the walkway here. This will be cut back a little bit further, and I will still narrow this up to bring this ledge up tighter to where it's not such a big, where it looks more proportionate, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. And you can tell the difference in chisels that I'm using with the difference in edge on how much more of a fine roll is coming off on the or curls is coming off the cotton burr, which is this one. And I don't know if you can hear that, but if you listen to this, versus this, a little bit higher pitched, so it's a little bit sharper. And a lot of that has to do with the angle, because you can't get a steep angle to cut and slice as sharp as you can a coarse angle. Coarse angle or larger angle will hold the edge better for longer, stay sharper for longer. You can also feel it on the feedback through your hands, through the tool, that it's just a much smoother cut. a more experienced carver would still be hogging out, or would have hogged out a lot more of this than I have at this point in the carving because of experience. Maybe one day I'll get to that point. I can tell you that a year and a half ago, I would have only probably had half of this cut out. So the more you do it, the better you get, the more confidence you have, the more vision you have in your final product or project that you're going for. So you're going down against the grain, all this roughness here. And as you cut up, it's a lot smoother. Well, it's kind of hard to cut up over on the side here because you're limited to arm space. This. I like rubbing and feeling the carving to feel the high spots in it. I've got a much better degree of touch than I do of sight. When it comes to that, it's like, oh, I can tell there's a bump here. If I look at it, it's kind of hard for me to see, but I can definitely feel it. Like right here, it comes down and back in, and I can feel that, but I can't really see it. So the center of the lighthouse is still coming right down through there. So I've taken enough off this side, it's getting there enough to where I'm going to have a whole lighthouse here and not just half of it. That was a little bit more than I wanted to take off, but and you just shave everything else down and it gets a little bit smaller, which is not necessarily a bad thing. because I believe it was out of proportion anyhow to the width to the height. But this can be a 1-story or 2-story lighthouse and not a 870 step lighthouse up to the top. We'll see where we end up when it's all said and done. Oh, I got deep there. And that's the rough base of the lighthouse. I'll take this back a little bit because that's bugging me. That's out of portion at this point. One thing that I'm learning to do while I'm doing this video is I'm learning how to carve with my left hand, just to keep my big fat head out of the way of the camera. Although sometimes you're going to get it in there. And I also think that the portion of the roof compared to this is way too big. It probably needs to be cut down to about half or less, but I will get to that. What I'd like to do is add a little building with a shed roof on the side down here, coming off here, probably about this tall, and then the rest of the lighthouse will come down into there. As I carve that back, I'll leave that there to make a shed roof, maybe put a little door on it. We'll see what happens. I still feel like this needs to be narrower, but I want to wait until I get all of this taken out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the bottom with a chisel. This all the way around, just so I've got a reference down through there. So I don't try to remember not to cut any of that off. And then here we go, chunking off big stuff again. You can see I just slipped because I was doing it left-handed and hit that. So let's try not to do that again. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll get back and record later.